Of the Sharp Football Show. I'm Warren Sharp, and we just had a computer explode on us. So if you're wondering why we're a few minutes late, that's the reason why. All the monitors dead. I got graphics cards issues. So we're going to be working a little bit with one arm tied behind our back here, because usually, as you guys know, I've shared this before, I've got like 8 screens here, and that might seem like overkill, but try taking 2 of the 8 away. It still sounds like you should have enough, but you don't. You're so used to having the other 2. And so now the chat's way over here. I'm looking way off the screen to get the chat. I do have a delay of game penalty. I don't know how much I'll be able to interact with the chat. I need a third eye over here focusing in on the chat. But we have a big show for you guys today, because we're going to be breaking down every single one of the college football playoff games momentarily, with insight from Ryan McCrystal and best bets from Ryan McCrystal on every single game, the way that Ryan would bet every single one of these 4 college football playoff games. The first one obviously is tonight. The next 3 are tomorrow. So great day of football on deck right now today. A lot of bowl games this afternoon, heading into New Year's Eve with the first of the 4 games here. And then we've got all day tomorrow. It's going to be a little different. We don't have as many games tomorrow, but it's still going to be fun watching the stakes of these games being as high as they are. What are we going to talk about here today, though? Before we dive into that, I'm going to talk a little bit about an NFL head coach that I just don't think teams are going to win with. I don't. There are certain coaches in the league that I just, even if they have a good quarterback, I don't feel like they're going to be able to have success. We're going to hit one of those momentarily. We're also going to talk about some coaches that are elevating players, doing the opposite of what the first topic is, but a coach that could elevate players is getting more out of some of his players than what you originally bargained for or signed up for, or what you thought that quarterback might deliver. We're also going to be talking a little bit about the Green Bay Packers, Matt LaFleur, and that coach, and how they are getting ready for the postseason, and in my opinion, stumbling too much along the way for the talent that they have on that roster, especially when you take the perspective of what was this team looking like last year at this time versus what are they looking like this year at this time. And then you think about the talent on that roster and you think about who they have available to them. There's really no excuse. There's no excuse for them to be having the issues like they are right now. And then we're going to be talking a little bit about some of our futures and some of the look ahead to week 18. So a good show on deck. Brett, I still do have better time management than the Bears. And I look forward to having all of you guys here in the chat as well. So it looks like everybody is live in the chat. I'm getting some comments from people. There's a little bit of slow to start. The stream is working though, so make sure you guys let me know anything in the chat. If you guys are streaming this over on X before we get started here, make sure you go over to YouTube. The channel is Sharp Football Analysis. Search for it over there. You can participate in the chat with us over there. While you're there, like the episode, subscribe to the show. We're growing this from scratch. This is our last episode, obviously, of the 2024 season. We started this show a few months ago, the beginning of 2024. A lot of groundswell, a lot of people from the grassroots enjoying and liking the show, and we're trying to bring it to you guys in a bigger and better way moving forward. So I hope that you guys are appreciative of it. Obviously, we'll hit the updates and some of the longest props and things of that nature, but this show has hopefully put a lot of money in your pocket this year as well. So with that being said, let's dive into our first topic. Let's cue that up. Okay, so we got to talk a little bit about Raheem Morris and this Atlanta Falcons team. They had the opportunity. Everything was in their control. Win their game on week 17, Sunday Night Football against the Commanders. Win week 18, you're in the playoffs. Tampa Bay with Baker Mayfield and Bucky Irving and all the fun that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have been giving us in 2024. they'd be watching from home on the sidelines, and you guys would be in the postseason. And you had every opportunity to do that. And I'm sorry, but your head coach lost it for you. I do not know what Raheem Morris is doing. He messed up at the end of the first half. Not as many consequences to that because they still got a field goal, and scoring a touchdown would have been difficult. But let's first walk through what he did at the end of the first half very quickly, and then we'll talk about the second half, and we'll just talk about why I do not think that the Atlanta Falcons can win with this head coach. Let's pull up that first video. All right, so let's pause it here real quick. We've got 1:51 left in the first half. So we got just on the other side, 2-minute warning. Atlanta has the ball. Note that they have all three of their timeouts. Now, there's the very widely used saying, you do not get to cash your timeouts for drink tickets at halftime or at the end of the game. If you go to halftime with 3 timeouts, you've not used 3 timeouts. You do not get anything in return for that. There's no bonus. There's no reward for walking into halftime with extra timeouts. So think about this when we think about that the Atlanta Falcons have 3 timeouts as they're trying to go score a touchdown at the end of the first half and go up 21-7, a very difficult lead for a team like the Washington Commanders to come back and go ahead and roll it. So these first 2 plays, we're going to have a moving clock. They get tackled and bounce, but they're massive gains by Bijan. And I don't necessarily have an issue with what they were doing here. Maybe after this second one, you might want to think about using a timeout, but I still think you're probably okay, but it's something to consider as we see Raheem Morris standing there, just the shots of Raheem standing there. What is he actually doing? Is he thinking about calling a timeout? Is he communicating with anybody? What is going on from that thought process? I just see him standing there kind of like looking at the sky cam as it's looking at him. Just kind of not really doing a whole lot in terms of, he's obviously not calling plays on offense. He's not talking. You don't see him communicating in any way, shape, or form. He's just standing there. So here we go. We're now under a minute, and we've got all 3 of our timeouts. Again, not the end of the world that they did not call a timeout there, but just setting the stage. Nice chunk gain. The clock has stopped at 46 seconds. I skipped to the next play. Next play, we got a 1st and 10, and we're going to have an inbounds tackle at like the 21 or 22 yard line. So pause it here for a second, Matt. At this point, I want you to note that there's 40 seconds left in the first half, and you have all 3 of your timeouts. And it's not like this was a QB dive or QB sneak or something along those lines on a 3rd and 1 where everybody, all your offense is still at the line of scrimmage, and they could just get on the ball real quick and maybe spike it or do something like that if you need to. You had guys running routes. You got your offensive line was way back at the whatever yard line that was, 35 or 40 yard line. They have to come all the way down to the ball. Like, there's a lot of people that have to reset here for the Atlanta Falcons. You got all 3 of your timeouts and 40 seconds left. This should have been a no-brainer. Your head coach should have been standing. I didn't see what else he was doing. He's not communicating with anybody in the headset. He's just standing there. He should be next to the line judge on his side of the field, getting ready to call an immediate timeout. Play this. Let's watch how much time evaporates off of this clock with the Falcons doing nothing on a 1st and 10. So yeah, they're hurrying to the line. They're trying to get the next snap off quickly. But they're still wasting 20 full seconds because watch this. I'll pause it for a quick second. 20 seconds. They've wasted 20 full seconds for no reason at all. So we get the ball. We're out of bounds. Set up a 3rd and medium. I think it's a 3rd and 6. Sorry, second and 7. 2nd down. Luckily, an incompletion. But here's the point, and the 3rd down is going to be an incompletion, and they're going to kick a field goal. Pause it here for a second, Matt, though, before this 3rd down play. Okay, here's the point. You have 3 timeouts, and you never use them. You did not use a single timeout because this 3rd down play, as we're going to play it, is incomplete. They settle for a field goal. You did not use a single timeout. Go ahead and roll it. It's astronomical. It's just mind-boggling to me how some coaches can be. So this, to me, this is you guys took your English classes or studied like some Greek history, this is a harbinger. This is like foreshadowing. This has shown us that this coach is absolutely clueless about clock management in the first half. So when we get to the late game situation, what do you think is going to happen here? Let's go ahead and bring it up. Probably he's not going to know what the hell he's doing. So I want to pause it here because this is a great statistic just to set the stage for how important this is. The Falcons have a 79% win probability, 79% likelihood of making the playoffs if they win this game, but that drops all the way down to 15% if they lose this game. So go ahead and roll it. We have 40 seconds left and 2 timeouts, and the game is tied. We're in the fourth quarter. This is the new reset for the game. You're at your own 19. You need to get into field goal range. You already know that Younghoe Koo is not your kicker. He didn't have a strong leg anyways. You're working with a backup kicker. You need to do something. You complete this pass along the sideline. He's tackled in bounds with 34 seconds left on the clock with 2 timeouts. And once again, pause it here for a second. Once again, the key is that your guys are nowhere near the ball. They have to run all the way up. I also don't necessarily love we're calling 2 plays ahead of time, and so then we're going to just run the second play as soon as we get to the line of scrimmage. Most of the time, that second play does not work out. Most of the time, that second play, that pre-called play, does not work out. You want to know why? Because teams never play like that. Teams never call 2 plays and then just get to line and run that second play. So guys are generally, their timing is a little thrown off when they hurry up to line of scrimmage and then that second play is, most of the time that second play doesn't work out. The spike sometimes works out better than that, but you have a timeout. You don't need to spike. You've got 2 timeouts. You should have called one here. So let's run it. They've called 2 plays in their huddle. They're going to get back on the football as quickly as they can, but they're running from distance. They're trying to get super organized here. And the ball is snapped with 17 seconds. You see, all that time is wasted, and Raheem Morris is just doing nothing. So let's just roll it. We have an incompletion. Of course, like I said, the timing generally does not work out. 12 seconds left. There's a series of, I think, like a false start penalty and then an additional. I think there's an additional conversion here. But once again, I don't know what he's doing, right? Like, he doesn't seem to be communicating with anybody. Is there a guy in his headset who's telling him about the clock and the timeout situation? I don't know. But every single time they've cut to him, he has never actually been communicating with somebody, speaking to this person. He's just standing there looking at the sky camera that's looking at him. I've never seen that before. I've never seen that before from a coach in a situation like this who appears to be responsible for nothing. So we got the penalty here. It's a pass interference. Now you're in field goal range, fringe field goal range. But had you called that timeout and saved approximately 15 seconds, now you can have 2 more plays to get closer. Your kicker has not made a 57-yarder, I believe, which is what this is. I don't believe the Falcons kicker has made a 57-yard field goal this season. So we're going to cut to where he attempts this kick. I think it's a 56-yarder, actually. And you could tell, like, I could tell watching this at home, the kick has too much height on it for the length that it is for a guy who doesn't have a strong leg. A guy who's got a strong leg, that the kick can go this high. But for a guy like this almost has to be a line drive. And so watch as this video is shown, and you can see how high this ball is getting off the ground. And it's definitely going to come up short. See how high that is? There's no way a kick that high for a guy with a leg that weak is going to make it there. So I knew that was going to work out. But this is just a coach. Then we've got one more picture at the end here. You pop up this picture. Okay, this was Raheem Morris's comment yesterday. In hindsight, it could have been a good decision or a better decision to take that time out, but I wanted to have the opportunity to move up there. You can always second guess those things, blah, 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 blah. It could have been. He's trying to say it could have been. This tells me that the guy is too clueless to be a head coach and too clueless to have success. You're going up there against some of the better head coaches in the NFL if you're trying to win the whole thing. With a guy like Raheem Morris, are you trying to just win some games and make the fan base happy that you can compete with Michael Penix? Or are you trying to maybe win the whole thing? Because with a coach like Raheem Morris, who is this clueless about clock management, and then has the gall afterwards to act like he might have made the right decision, but just because it didn't work out, then maybe it could have been the wrong decision. It just tells me that this team is never going to do anything. So that's enough on that topic. He's not a legitimate candidate, in my opinion, to take this team to where it needs to go if he can't get something so simple as this. I completely understand if a head coach does not understand how to utilize the clock as much as he should. That is where an expert comes in. Every single team should have one who should be helping the coach out. And I read some comments afterwards that if the Falcons have one, Raheem Morris does not care about the guy and is not utilizing or leaning on him. And that's assuming that they have one. This is just not going to work out for them. Now I want to change the tune here to talk a little bit more positively about some coaches that are actually elevating their team. I've already said that I think that Kevin O'Connell should be coach of the year. But it is amazing what we've got this big game on Sunday night. The Detroit Lions versus the Minnesota Vikings to decide the number one overall seed. These teams have 14 wins apiece. Just outstanding seasons from both the Lions and from the Minnesota Vikings. But think about the quarterbacks that these teams had and the perception of those quarterbacks 3 to 4 years ago. Right? For the Lions, it was Jared Goff. The Rams couldn't win with Jared Goff. Sean McVay wanted to get rid of Jared Goff because he couldn't win enough games. Jared Goff played well for a little while in LA. They made runs. They were a good team. Couldn't get it done against the New England Patriots. Time to move on. Bring in Matt Stafford. First year they win the Super Bowl. It must have been Jared Goff. Jared Goff is in Detroit. Public consensus, public opinion of Jared Goff wasn't very high. You got a quarterback like Sam Darnold, cast out from everywhere. I didn't think he was going to have as much success as he had in Minnesota. I don't think anybody. Some people were higher on Sam Darnold. I was a Sam Darnold truther like 2 to 3 years into his career, but even I kind of soured a little bit on Sam Darnold. Even I didn't think that Sam Darnold was going to be able to do what he did now. So I held on to my belief for longer than most, but then even I abandoned my belief and didn't think he was going to be able to do what he did here. I don't think anybody's going to tell you that Sam Darnold and Jared Goff, if they were playing with Raheem Morris on the Atlanta Falcons, would be having the season that they are. I don't think these guys would be having the season if they're playing in Cleveland or playing at probably half the teams out there. It goes to show how important pairing a good coach who can not just call good plays, but design sound offense, understand when to throw the football, understand strategies of optimizing your offense, how to attack the defense, when to be aggressive in games, how much to pass the football, how to utilize play action, pre-snap motion, general concepts that have success, forward-thinking teams. These are the coaches that are elevating quarterbacks like Sam Darnold and like Jared Goff. Most coaching staffs out there would not be able to elevate them like they are. They would not be sitting here like they are. And so that's why I get so frustrated with certain ownership groups, like the McCaskies and the Chicago Bears, or like Arthur Blank and the Atlanta Falcons, when they cannot seem to understand the right types of coaches that they should be hiring here. Because coaches set the stage for ultimate success. You could have a good team, but with a bad coach, it's going to be hard to you're going to be overcoming impediments along the way. And I look no further than a team like the Buffalo Bills, who, in my opinion, the overall strength of that roster and the talent of a quarterback like Josh Allen should have by this point been in a Super Bowl. I understand Patrick Mahomes is a freak. I understand you have to get past Patrick Mahomes if you're going to be able to get to the Super Bowl. There's no reason, though, in one of these games in the postseason that the Buffalo Bills should not have been able, with the collection of talent, to win one of those games to then advance to the Super Bowl. To give Josh Allen a chance, in my opinion, they probably would have ultimately had success, just like Mahomes has had, and won a Super Bowl for the Buffalo Bills. But it's because I don't view Sean McDermott as that type of a coach who's going to ultimately do all the little tricks and all the little things that are going to be able to get his team to excel to the highest degree. Now, we don't know yet if Kevin O'Connell can get there, but he certainly has elevated this offense to a stratosphere that I don't think anybody thought they would be able to reach before the season started. So, Ben Johnson, obviously one of the hottest commodities this offseason, and for good reason. He should have been the hottest commodity for the last 2 years. And we'll see where he ends up. But the point being, if you don't have one of these guys that are at the forefront of this thought process, you're playing a step behind. Patrick Mahomes, I do not mean this as a slight. Patrick Mahomes is not Patrick Mahomes without Andy Reid. The way we perceive Patrick Mahomes, the multi-time Super Bowl winner, trying to go for 3 straight that no team has ever done before, winning all these awards. Like, Mahomes is phenomenal. Probably the best quarterback in the NFL every year. Could win the MVP. I mean, he's had down years. He's not going to win it this year, nor does he deserve to win it this year. The point is, if you're drafting a quarterback, how are you not saying Mahomes is the best in the NFL? He's not having an MVP season this year, but he's the best quarterback probably. But he's not winning as many games as he is without Andy Reid there, helping design the offense, strategize for opponents, call the plays at the right time, make the adjustments, like all of these little things. That's where some teams are just never going to cut it. And kudos to what we're seeing from Ben Johnson with the Detroit Lions. And obviously kudos to what we're seeing from Kevin O'Connell with the Minnesota Vikings and Sam Darnold, etc. Okay, let's break down all 4 of these playoff games. And we've got video. We're going to be talking to Ryan McCrystal. He's going to be breaking down all 4 of these games. But first, I got to mention something very special that we're doing here. I saw it in the chat earlier, again, because I can't look at the chat quite as much, but Exile, dead on with Sean McDermott, Sean McDummy. This is why Steve Spagnuolo stays in his lane. I don't disagree, Jack. Steve Spagnuolo, some of these guys, some of these coaches, they're great at what they do. You put them in a different position, they may not be nearly as good. Steve Spagnuolo, I think he deserves to be a head coach because of how brilliant he is and how smart he is on the defensive side of the ball. If he became a head coach again, though, what he would need to do is get people to fill all the other types of roles and just focus on his defense. But he's deserving of that opportunity. But maybe he just doesn't want that opportunity because he enjoys just what he's doing and winning championships. And it's hard to fault him for that. But yeah, absolutely. All right. Before we get into their college bowl games, I got to mention this. We went 3-0 last night on our props, and we are starting off the new year doing something pretty crazy that we haven't done in any year previous that you guys should really look to take advantage of if you are not already on some type of a subscription with us. Now, if you are on a subscription with us, you're not getting this deal, but that's because you're already 10-2 in bowl games. We've released 12 bowl games. We've got more going on right now, today, tonight, tomorrow. We've won 10 of those 12. So these other people didn't get that opportunity. These other people haven't won week in and week out with us in the regular season. So for $1, you can get on board with us through Sunday for just $1. And the coupon code to use is on the screen, I assume. Oh, you don't need a coupon code. Okay, there's no code. Okay, there's no code. Just go to sharp.football. Go to sharp.football and you get in for $1. Go to sharp.football, you see the button, click, you get in for $1 for everything. That's our gift, January 1st, $1. You get the kind of the way that works here. We've got 6 more bowl bets that are up there right now. And then we'll have some more probably for the games tomorrow. We had another winning week last week. $100 better is up to $14,274 on the season with us. We are 518 wins, 373 losses, NFL and college combined this year. That's 58% on almost 900 bets. Sounds like it's hard to believe. Now, some of these are props, but we do factor in the juice, of course, when we're tallying up the units won and the dollars won and lost. We don't really bet that many things that are like minus 200, minus 300 to get easy winners. In fact, we don't bet any of those types of things. So to be able to hit 58% on 900 bets in a football season is absurd. That's why this is the most profitable season that we have ever had at Sharp Football. Props have been incredible. You'll get all of our props for this upcoming week as well. So $1, and we're 10-2 on college bets for the bowls. We got more. There's 6 more pending right now. I guess 5 more. One of them started at noon today. So take advantage of that. This is going to end tomorrow night. So tomorrow at midnight, this is just a quick flash sale. And if you're wondering, hey, I'm a subscriber. Why are these guys getting it for $1? Again, you have already been getting all of these bets that have been winning in 10-2 in bowl games. These other people haven't. So this is only through next Sunday. They get access for just $1. We're also doing something for you guys that are on board. And I believe it's called Show 250. Show 250 if you want to get $250 off our postseason package. So let's say you're already on board. You're on board for a regular season package. You want to get on board for the playoffs. Show 250. You'll get all the NFL and all the bowl games for the rest of the whole season, all the way through to the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl is crazy. If you guys have been with us in the past, I do like a 50 to 60 page PDF that details every single matchup all the way down to like the smallest one about these teams and about what I think is going to happen in the Super Bowl. I get it to you like a week in advance. We bet on a bunch of props, all different types of props, some novelty, but most of them relate to the game itself. Is going to make your Super Bowl. You're going to be more knowledgeable about it, and you're probably going to win more by being on board with us for that. So you get that as well, that whole report, and be entertained all the way through from January 1st to the Super Bowl. Show 250 gets you $250 off of that. But regardless, if you're new to this, why not just sign up for $1? Go to sharp.football. Okay. Let's get to the bowl game preview. We're going to start with the game tonight. New Year's Eve. Hopefully everybody's ready for the game tonight. Penn State, Boise State. Penn State dominated SMU last week, won 38-10 in the first round of the game. So they advanced while Boise State had a bye week. Penn State's got their dynamic quarterback receiver duo. Boise State has got Ashton Genty. They won the Mountain West Conference. They're putting up 35 points a game. Will they be able to have that same level of success here against a defense like Penn State's? How successful will Penn State's offense be against a Boise State defense that really hasn't had to go up against very many top flight level offenses so far this season? How successful could the Penn State offense be here tonight? Let's
So I
ask
think
Ryan
Penn State
McCrystal.
ultimately wins this game, but I'm picking Boise State to cover this double-digit spread. And the key factor here is obviously the run game. When we're talking about Boise State, we've got to talk about the run game in Ashton Genty. And I just don't think Penn State is going to be able to do enough to bottle him up in order for them to dominate this game and cover this big spread. Now, Penn State does have a good run defense, but their strength is creating early contact. And we know that that doesn't really phase Ashton Genty. He's one of the most difficult runners in the country to bring down. And Penn State actually struggles a little bit with avoiding broken missed tackles up near the line of scrimmage. In fact, if we look at opponent adjusted data, Boise State ranks second in yards after contact per attempt. Obviously, that's mostly Ashton Genty doing the damage there. Penn State ranks 44th on defense. So they're not terrible, but there's still a clear advantage there in terms of the yards after contact that we're going to see in this game for Boise State and Ashton Genty. So I think that Boise State is going to be able to move the ball, potentially leading to some long drives, bleeding the clock a little bit, which is what they'll want to do just in order to limit the number of possessions in this game, keep it relatively low scoring, allow them to keep it close and have a chance in the fourth quarter. So then it becomes a question of, can Penn State do enough on the other side of the ball to open up this game a little bit and build up a big lead? As I said, I think Penn State does enough to win, but I don't think they're going to be able to dominate on the offensive side of the ball enough to cover this large spread. And I think one of the main reasons here is Boise State runs a unique defense. They typically line up in a 3-2-6 defensive formation. That means they're only putting 5 defensive linemen and linebackers on the field. That's significant because Penn State runs a pretty balanced offense, and they're basically willing to do what the defense lets them to do. If you line up with a light box, they will run the ball. That's what Boise State does almost every single time because they're only putting 5 linemen and linebackers on the field. Now, they will creep a safety up to get a 6th man in the box sometimes, which they will probably do often against Penn State. A 6-man box is still a light box. Penn State frequently lining up with 2 tight ends and heavier formations. They will run the ball when Boise State shows them a light box. And I think that's what Boise State wants them to do in this game. They would much rather the ball be in the hands of Nick Singleton, Keytron Allen, running the ball, because then you got Boise State when they're in offense running the ball a lot, bleeding the clock a little bit, slowing the game down. If Penn State's running the ball a lot, they're essentially going to be doing the exact same thing, which is how Boise State wants this game to play out. They want to kind of keep the ball out of Drew Aller's hands because that's where Penn State has the potential for some more explosive plays, because Aller's been pretty good throwing downfield this season. So I think this unique defensive scheme, which, by the way, Penn State has not faced a single snap of this 3-2-6 defense all season, so it'll be a different look for them. I think this sort of plays into Boise State's hand even more so in this matchup than it usually does for them. So, ultimately, like I said, I think Penn State is going to win this game because if it's close late in the game, I have a lot more confidence in Drew Aller making plays in the fourth quarter than I do Boise State's quarterback, Maddox Madsen. But I do think that Boise State keeps this close and ultimately covers this double-digit spread.
Catching the double-digit points here, and primarily it sounds like it's because of the light boxes that Boise's going to play, less linemen on there. Penn State's going to run the ball, not have as much opportunity to get those explosive and jump out to a big lead. So we'll see if he's right. That game kicks off tonight. Now we've got the big slate tomorrow of massively important games, starting with the Peach Bowl, where Texas takes on Arizona State. Arizona State, Kenny Dillingham, Sun Devils, they clinched the Big 12 championship. They had a bye week. They got Cam Scatterbo, but they do have some losses at the receiver position. And now you're going up against a defense in Texas that is not going to have the same type of strategy that Arizona faced in the Iowa State game, where Iowa State just played with their light boxes, did not try to get down and stop the run, allowed the only strength of Arizona State, which is that run game with Scatterbo, to win the game for them. And to me, that's inexcusable as a coach. If you know a team that has to play a certain way, it's one thing if Arizona State, if Iowa State rather comes in and says, we're going to try this strategy. We're going to try to do what we do. Let's come in here. Let's do what we do. Let's really try to, when that clearly is not working and clearly is not having success. If you're not making an adjustment off of that, you're doing a disservice to your players. I don't know why more coaches don't realize that they are letting down their players who have worked their asses off all season long for you and done everything you've told them to do But then in one of the biggest games of the year, you refuse to change your strategy at all to give your players a better chance to win the game. It just crazy to me how some coaches are that incompetent. But that's the way that Iowa State is. Texas obviously understands what's coming for them. And so there might be some trick plays. There might be some other ways to create explosives for Arizona State. But Texas should know, first priority, stop Scadaboo. And if we do, we have a very good chance of winning this game. They're obviously 12-point favorites. Texas beat Clemson. Clemson played a great game last week, but Texas won, advanced to this game. Let's see what Ryan has to say as to whether or not we're going to get some opportunity from Quinn Ewers and the Texas Longhorns to cover this large spread, or if he likes the underdog and how much success we're going to get
Texas
out of
to
the
cover
ground
the
game.
spread here, and I don't really think there's any way Arizona State keeps this game competitive. The one way the Sun Devils might be able to pull off an upset here, or stay close at least, is if they can force Quinn Ewers into some mistakes. But the way to do that is to create pressure. And creating pressure is one of Arizona State's greatest weaknesses. It's a problem when you look at this matchup. Arizona State ranks 78th in opponent-adjusted pressure rate generated. Texas ranks 14th in pressure rate allowed. They've got one of the better offensive lines in the country. I don't think it will be a problem for them stopping the sort of no-name defense for Arizona State. They've got a bunch of future NFLers on the offensive line. So it's going to be a lopsided battle in the trenches, which means Ewers probably has time to sit back, pick apart the Arizona State secondary, and they probably build an early lead and then are just able to run the ball through most of the second half. Now, can Arizona State answer? They've had a prolific offense at times this season, so maybe you would think that they could keep up in a shootout. I don't think that's going to happen in this game because they're without their top wide receiver, Jordan Tyson, who was lost for the year in the regular season finale. To go over some of Tyson's numbers from back in the regular season, he had a 38% target share and he had a 52% target share on throws of 10 or more yards downfield. So if Texas gets that lead, Arizona State's obviously going to have to throw the ball out more often. They're going to have to take some shots downfield, but they're without the one guy who's been able to make those plays for them throughout this season. Now, all of that didn't matter. It didn't matter that Jordan Tyson wasn't there in the Big 12 championship game against Iowa State. It was the Cam Scadaboo show. He ran all over them and was a factor in the passing game. There's a key difference here, though, in terms of the defenses that they're facing against Iowa State and now against Texas. You can run the ball in Iowa State. There are open running lanes to be had against their 3-3-5 defense. Iowa State ranks 100th in yards before contact allowed this season. So there were obviously running lanes against that defense for Scadaboo. Texas ranks 25th in that by that same metric. And if Texas isn't scared of the passing game because Tyson isn't there, they're going to make adjustments and creep up and defend the run by stacking the box. And it's going to look completely different. The boxes that they're running into in this Longhorns defense will look very different than what they saw from Iowa State in that Pac-12 title game. So even early in the game, when it's close enough for Arizona State to try to lean on the running game more with Cam Scadaboo, I don't think they're going to have a ton of success just because Texas is going to come out trying to stack the box, stop that run game, and force them to throw the ball because they know that Arizona State just doesn't have any weapons. So I think Arizona State struggles to put points on the board. I think Texas suffocates them on defense, and I don't think Arizona State defensively can do enough to create problems for Quinn Ewers. So I think Texas covers this 2-touchdown spread relatively easily.
Texas big. They were 12. I think they're 12.5 right now. The line might be on the move. It's hard for me to see when two of my monitors blew up, including the one that holds my odds screen. So I got to figure out as soon as this broadcast is over how to fix that. But bottom line here for Ryan is that Texas is going to be able to stop the run game. And if Texas gets up, then guess what? That lack of wide receiving talent who is catching or was targeted on over 50% of the deep shots, the shots 10 plus yards down the field, Jordan Tyson, the wide receiver out of Arizona State, they're not going to be able to throw the ball to him to get back into the game. And so Ryan believes that that's going to be a big problem if, from a game script perspective, Texas can jump out quickly. It's going to be hard for Arizona State to get back into the game, maybe even to get that backdoor cover that they might otherwise need. If you can't run Scadaboo, you need to throw the ball, and your best wide receiver who is catching and being targeted on over 50% of those deeper shots is not available to you due to injury. So tough situation for Arizona State. Did not rear its head in the championship game for the Big 12 last week, but might very well in this game. All right, now to Keith Jackson staple game, if you're old enough to remember. Keith Jackson calling all these games. Absolutely loved watching the Rose Bowls when he was on the call. We got Ohio State versus Oregon in the game that everybody basically penned in to be the matchup. I think this was the most picked matchup in the second round. And the matchup that everybody's looking forward to most, probably other than the national championship, is who's going to win this hotly contested Rose Bowl. You have Oregon, they're the only undefeated team, and you've got Ohio State, who dominated Tennessee. Now, Ohio State dominated Tennessee at home in very cold weather against a team in Tennessee who has a quarterback that doesn't have that experience. Their receivers were getting banged up in that game. They fell behind early. They had nothing to do but pass. Their secondary was banged up as well. And so Ohio State really could open up the offense. And it seemed like everything Chip Kelly and company were calling offensively was finding success. Will the same thing be true in the Rose Bowl tomorrow against the Oregon Ducks defense with Dan Lanning trying to make problems for the Ohio State offense? He has now seen what maybe blueprint Ohio State might be pivoting towards with a higher pass rate, a little bit more aggression. Now that cat's out of the bag. Will those adjustments be made from Dan Lanning to slow down the Ohio State offense? Let's see what Ryan
Back
has
when we
to
initially
say
filled
about
out the
that.
bracket for this playoffs, I picked Oregon to go all the way. I'm going against that pick here, though, and taking Ohio State to knock off the Ducks in the Rose Bowl. Now, what happened since then was Michigan woke up Ohio State, and we saw a different Ohio State offense. Chip Kelly and Ryan Day sort of revamped the offense against Tennessee, leaned more into the passing game, and I think that's going to be a critical difference in this matchup. And I want to run through some numbers to kind of back up the changes that Ohio State has made. In the regular season, Ohio State threw 15 or more yards downfield just 20% of the time. They're ranked 88th in the country. Despite all of those weapons at their disposal, despite a good quarterback in Will Howard, they were not taking a lot of shots downfield. They actually dialed it back even further in their big games. If we look at just the biggest matchups of the season, Indiana, Oregon, Penn State, Michigan, they threw 15 or more yards downfield only 17% of the time in those four matchups. So they were not attacking downfield. They were getting more conservative in the biggest games. Then against Tennessee, they threw the ball 15 or more yards down the field 28% of the time. They were being extra aggressive, and Will Howard, Jeremiah Smith, Emeka Buka absolutely lived up to the expectations. Howard was 7 of 8 for 180 yards at that depth against the Vols. And that's a good Tennessee secondary, a better Tennessee secondary than Oregon has. Oregon ranked 69th in completion rate allowed at that depth. And in the first meeting, Howard did have success when he was given opportunities to throw downfield. He was 5 of 8 throwing 15 or more yards downfield. So he's already sort of proven that he can throw the ball deep against this defense. Ohio State has now proven that they're willing to open up the offense and be more aggressive and attack downfield. So I think the offense for Ohio State is really going to click. So the question is, can Oregon answer? Now the answer is maybe. We kind of already saw them do it. They beat Ohio State once already, even though it was a more conservative Ohio State passing attack than we're expecting to see this time around. So maybe they can do it. This is obviously a good Oregon offense. But I think looking back at that game, the first time these teams met, kind of everything fell into place for Oregon. And even then, it was a very close call for them at the end of that game. Dylan Gabriel throwing downfield at 15 or more yards, the stat that we were just talking about with Will Howard, he was 6 of 6 against Ohio State. That was his most completions at that depth all season. And it was the most allowed by Ohio State all season. So his best game paired with Ohio State's worst game. I wouldn't bet on the repeat performance of that, not only just to that extent, but I don't think he's necessarily even going to come close to that in this matchup because that's not Oregon's style of play. Now, maybe they think they saw something and maybe that's why they attack downfield a little bit more often. We'll see, but there's nothing that I can point to that would make me think that was purposeful. I think it was more of that Oregon was trailing quite a bit in the second half of that game, so they were forced to attack downfield. And give them credit, they followed through. But there's just not a lot of reason to think that they're going to be able to do that, a repeat performance to that extent, because Gabriel, this is really more of a dink and dunk type of offense. They want to get the ball to their playmakers underneath. In fact, Gabriel throws 5 or fewer yards downfield, the third highest rate in the nation. Now that offense works. He averages 8.9 yards per attempt on those throws, so his playmakers do make plays, but stopping those types of plays is the strength of Ohio State's defense. They've got 2 of the best safeties in the country in Latham Ransom and Caleb Downs, so having those guys step up and attack those underneath routes is their strength. And it did work in that first matchup. Ohio State held Gabriel to just 4.5 yards per attempt, basically cut his production in half on those shorter throws. It was those downfield throws that Gabriel had that allowed them to keep pace with Ohio State in that first matchup. And I just don't think we can expect that type of dominant performance from Gabriel throwing downfield when, number one, it's a strength of Ohio State's defense, and number two, it's just not how Oregon typically plays. So I'm expecting Ohio State to come out clicking on all cylinders on offense. I think maybe Oregon has a chance to keep up, but given how well they played in that first matchup and still barely were able to keep up, I don't think they're going to be able to pull it off in this matchup. So I do think Ohio State's offense is ultimately too much for the Ducks in this matchup, and I like Ohio State to win the Rose Bowl and cover the spread.
All right, so that's as in-depth as it gets. Some things that stood out to me. Hopefully you guys are taking notes and using this for some of your thoughts. Maybe you're able to bet on some player props in these games based upon the state that you're in, or using some of the other sites that do allow you to bet on player props no matter where you are in some of these like contests like Underdog, Sleeper, etc. But at any rate, we're going to see an opportunity here for Ohio State and Will Howard have some success down the field and stay aggressive down the field. Ryan is commenting that we saw 28% of their passes thrown 15 plus yards last week against Tennessee, and the Oregon secondary is even weaker defending such passes. So if Ohio State stays aggressive, and I actually love it when teams pivot late in the season in some of the biggest games, and having watched the NFL a lot more than I've watched college in the past, the one team that I'll liken this to, and maybe some of you guys from back in the day, this will resonate with you a little bit, but do you guys remember Bill Cowher, the Pittsburgh Steelers, and a young Ben Roethlisberger? This team was one of the most run-heavy teams in the NFL. They were trying to protect Big Ben early on in his career. You remember the Super Bowl against the Seattle Seahawks, but they had Jerome Bettis there, and they would run the ball a lot in their games. But when it got to the postseason, they were having Big Ben drop back on early downs and rip the ball, pass the ball, open up the game, build a lead quickly, and then get a little bit more conservative late when you have that lead and you can run the football and stand to do that. I love when coaches try something that might be a little bit more successful where they didn't need to utilize it as much during the regular season because they could win without it. But now that you're in the playoff games and the games that matter and loser goes home, winner gets to advance to potentially win the whole thing, that you incorporate more of those aspects to the game that might be a little bit more high risk, but gives you a much higher ceiling, and you feel confident that your players are capable of doing that. It throws a monkey wrench into what the opposing teams are used to defending or are expecting out of you. And so if Ohio State uses this downfield passing attack a little bit more in this game, yeah, like I said before, the cat's out of the bag. Dan Lanning has seen it, but I'm interested to see if it stays successful. Clearly, those receivers, it seems like Ohio State just produces them. They're at a different level. They could have some success here against the secondary. And then on the flip side, Ryan's talking about that short passing attack that Oregon likes to implement here is something that Ohio State is pretty good at defending, and notes about that they throw the ball short, 5 or fewer yards at the third highest rate. So what might Dan Lanning's Oregon Ducks enter this game with? Is there something they could surprise Ohio State by doing that might have some success here? Because Ohio State is anticipating a lot of that underneath passing. Could Dan Lanning bring out something a little bit different to have some success? It's going to be a great game. And Jason mentioned the granddaddy of them all. I'm really looking forward to watching that Rose Bowl tomorrow. I'm already excited right now. And this is like, I love football. I'm not even as big of a college football fan as probably a lot of you guys. So I can't imagine how some of you guys are looking forward to watching that game tomorrow. But I'm so jacked up for that one. Okay, let's talk about the nightcap tomorrow night. Got the Sugar Bowl between Notre Dame and Georgia. Georgia Bulldogs, they're going to be going with Gunnar Stockton at quarterback, obviously, because Carson Beck is injured, declared for the NFL draft. Stockton has appeared in 3 games, 206 passing yards, no touchdowns, 1 interception in those games, going up against the Fighting Irish that we saw last week take on Indiana at home in South Bend and have a lot of success pretty much every which way that they wanted to, but a lot of ground success as well, playing solid defense, led by Riley Leonard, who likes to run the football a lot. We've got a lot of time in prep here for Georgia and that coaching staff. And typically, this is when they're at their best, trying to figure out how to stop an offense that really is not that open, diverse, multidimensional as Notre Dame's is. This is a great opportunity for a Georgia team that doesn't have necessarily as much talent as some of the prior rosters have had, is now working with a different quarterback who doesn't have a lot of experience. This would be the type of game, in my opinion, that would be a massive chip or what do you call it, pin on the shirt of that head coach and that coaching staff. If they're able to win this game and shut down that Notre Dame offense, because it proves that it was on the coaches more so than it was on talent, it was on quarterback. And so I'm excited to see what Ryan has to say about this game.
Georgia and Notre Dame match up really well. The close spread certainly makes sense, but I'm going to side with Georgia here. I first want to talk about the quarterback situation for Georgia because Carson Beck is injured. He's not going to play. They've turned it over to Gunnar Stockton, who we saw a little bit in the second half of that game against Texas. And a lot has been made in recent weeks about the way that the Georgia offense sort of changed once Stockton came in. This is a very aggressive downfield passing attack when Carson Beck is in there. And they didn't look like that in the second half against Texas. They sort of scaled it back a little bit. It was not the same type of aggressive passing offense that we've seen from Georgia throughout the season. But I want to dig into those numbers just a little bit to sort of poke some holes in what some people have been talking about, because Stockton was 2 of 4 on throws 10 or more yards downfield. He played essentially half the game. Beck was 1 of 5 on throws 10 or more yards downfield in that game. So Stockton wasn't attacking downfield as much as Beck has done it sometimes this year, but he was attacking at the same rate that Beck did in the first half of that game, and Beck wasn't having success, so it would make sense to sort of dial it back and not attack a very good Texas secondary downfield very often in this matchup. I think the way that they played that game in the second half ultimately looked pretty similar with Stockton out there as it would have had Beck been able to continue going, just because that's the way the game flow was going and the way that Texas was defending them. It didn't make sense to maintain that aggressive style that they've had at other points in the year because of how Texas was playing and because of the talent in that Texas secondary. I also think it's worth mentioning that Georgia didn't just get stuck with Gunnar Stockton. He's not just the only guy left they have to plug in there. They have another backup, Jaden Rashada, who's a highly recruited redshirt freshman who was at Arizona State last year. He actually won the starting job at Arizona State last year and was their starter for a few games before an injury set him back, and then he ended up transferring to Georgia this season. So they actually do have somebody on the roster with more experience in games than Stockton. Now, Stockton's been at Georgia for 3 years, so it makes sense to why they're a little bit more comfortable with him running their offense than Rashada. But I do think it's worth noting that it's not like he's just the next guy up that they have to throw out there. He has had to compete for that backup job because there are talented quarterbacks there, Jaden Rashada, and also another 4-star freshman on the roster that he's had to compete with throughout the year to maintain that spot. So clearly the fact that they're rolling with him, they trust him. He's had to compete hard with some talented quarterbacks that we're going to see as starters in the future, either at Georgia or at other schools that they transfer to. So this is not a case of a bad backup for Georgia. This is a guy who's competed for that spot, and we may even see him as Georgia's starter next year. Now, the primary reason why I'm taking Georgia, even though I do think this is going to be a close game, is Kirby Smart. He is just phenomenal when he has time to prepare for these games. He's essentially the new Nick Saban. We used to say about Nick Saban all the time, if you give him time to prepare for a team, he's going to figure out a way to beat you. I think we should be saying the same thing about Kirby Smart. Smart is now 7-1 in bowl games and first-round playoff games where he's had a few weeks to prepare. He's 9-2 overall in bowl games and playoff games, with those extra games added in being the national championship game from the 14 playoff format. Also, if you look back at early season big games like the Clemson game in week 1 this year, when Georgia plays a ranked team in week 1 or week 2, so Georgia has obviously had some time in the offseason to prepare for that game and dig into that matchup. Kirby Smart is 7-0 at Georgia in those games. So 7-1 in bowl games and first round playoff games. 7-0 in week 1 or week 2 ranked matchups. That's 14-1 overall in these games where he has had an extended period of time to prepare for a specific opponent. We need to talk about him the way we talk about Saban in these games. He is going to find a way to defend you. this is just a lopsided matchup between him and Marcus Freeman on the other side. Now, Marcus Freeman, obviously, he's done a good job at Notre Dame this year for the most part, but he's had some big mistakes throughout his career. Obviously, there was that blunder against Ohio State last season where at the last play of the game, Ohio State was going for the game-winning touchdown. Notre Dame had 10 guys on the field. Then there was the game against NIU this year where Notre Dame just came out unprepared for a very mediocre opponent. There have been some slip-ups like that throughout the year. Marcus Freeman and Kirby Smart are not even in the same, do not belong in the same breath at this stage of their careers. Kirby Smart is the elite coach in college football. Freeman's getting there. He's improving, but he's not close to Kirby Smart at this point. So in what we're expecting to be a close game, give me the best coach in college football all day. I'm taking Georgia to cover this spread and advance to the semifinals.
There you go. Ryan likes Georgia in the nightcap, the last college football playoff game before we hit the semifinals. And hopefully you guys have seen through those 4 videos why I respect Ryan a ton. I love his analysis. The way that he attacks these games is part of the reason why guys like Rich and myself and Ryan, we all mesh really well together because we're very analytical, and the way that we research these games is quite similar, but we're all attacking it from different perspectives. And I love working with these guys. And Ryan's gave you 4 games. Hopefully he goes 4-0 on those best bets that he shared with you there. But really looking forward to these games. And of course, now keep in mind with Ryan, 2 things. First of all, on X, I don't know, Matt, can you throw up his graphic? Pull it up here. This is the way that you follow Ryan. If you're not already doing so, make sure that you follow Ryan on X. That's his X handle there. Second of all, you can read all of these game write-ups up at sharpfootballanalysis.com. So he has detailed analysis for every single one of these 4 games. If you're sitting around here with the next 3-4 hours before you start turning the page to your nighttime New Year's Eve plans, and you want to do a little bit more digging on some of these games, I highly encourage you to go read the previews that Ryan has up on sharpfootballanalysis.com for each one of these games, separate articles for each one, breaking down the games in more detail than what he was able to share in the video. And last but not least, if you guys have been aware of Sharp Football Analysis for several years now, you know that there is not another website that digs into the NFL draft more than we do when it's time to do that. We are all year round analyzing the NFL. And as it relates to the NFL draft, Ryan is one of the most accurate mock drafters in the nation. We also have another mock drafter on staff who is Brendan Donahue, and he is right up there as well. In fact, I think Brendan, his score surpassed Ryan this past year. In either case, Brendan was the most accurate mock drafter, I want to say 2 years ago. I'm not sure where they stand right now because still we're not even to the playoffs yet, and my mind is focused on this. But since we're almost approaching January and we're talking college, make sure that you guys are tuned into these guys when it comes time to betting on the NFL draft, betting those prop bets on over-under draft position. Will this guy go in the first round or not? We'll do some more podcasts and videos when it gets time to the offseason and thinking about the NFL draft with both of those guys. And it's a ton of fun, and they've been quite profitable as well. So looking forward to seeing those guys at that point. But now you should be ready for the college football playoffs. Speaking of not being ready for the NFL playoffs, let's talk about one team in particular that I'm just concerned about and have been concerned about for a couple of weeks now. So the Green Bay Packers are now, they've slowly been getting there, but they are now the number 1 most run-heavy team in the NFL on early downs in the first half of games. The number 1 most run-heavy. And if you think about this team, it doesn't necessarily jive with what you would think. You think maybe you're conservative with Jordan Love early on, but we saw what Jordan Love did down the stretch last year. We see all these receivers that have varying levels of talent, but they've got a deep wide receiver room. And you've got a tight end. You've got a play caller and coach who has been explosive in the past, has been able to get this team to pass the ball and have success. You see the run that they went on last season, that you see what they were doing in the playoffs until ultimately they ended up losing in San Francisco. But what they did in Dallas and how they got into the playoffs itself with the passing. And I'll share some of the statistics last year versus this year momentarily, but that's the passing game. So you think this team can pass. Their quarterback is getting a little bit more experience. He should feel confident about entrusting him to pass the ball. And as much as I like Josh Jacobs in general as a running back, like this is not Derrick Henry, right? This is not a team that you're just, oh my God, now that we've got Josh Jacobs, we're going to maul people to death. Josh Jacobs, since week 12, I'll list out every single one of his games. 4.1 yards per carry, 2.3 yards per carry, 3.7 yards per carry, 3.6 yards per carry, 5.3, the only game where he was above average against the New Orleans Saints, and then last week back to 4.1 yards per carry. Josh Jacobs had some nice games, and it was okay to like lean on him in certain situations, but this is not like some sort of dominant ground game that you should just become, Josh Jacobs is here. Remember how you got Josh Jacobs in the offseason, right? It's not as if you drafted this guy in the first round and you've built your whole team around him. The guy was not that expensive, and you brought him in here. And yet LaFleur last week in a game against the Minnesota Vikings, on early downs in the first half, 11 Josh Jacobs runs and 6 Jordan Love pass attempts. 11-6. Jacobs averaged 3.7 yards per carry. So I'm watching the game and I'm tweeting about this. Now you're going to have Jordan Love chuck the ball in the second half being cold because you didn't work him into the game. You didn't instill confidence in him early. You're doing the exact opposite of like what I was talking about with Bill Cowher or what Ohio State has been doing with, they might be expecting runs. So let's come on and pass the football here. Let's come out and get our quarterback into the game so that when we are in some third down situations, he'll be lubed up, ready to roll, feel good, build up that chemistry with our receivers. Right now, we're seeing no chemistry with these receivers, right? We are not seeing the chemistry that we need to see with this receiving core because they've been so run heavy. And you could say, oh, well, Jaden Reed's not playing well. Oh, he dropped a pass. Oh, this guy's not. How about the coaches work with the quarterback and the receivers to get them that confidence that they need? Call enough pass plays so that your passing game is rolling as we approach late December and into the postseason. It's not that hard to run the ball if you want to run the ball. Especially, it's nice to run the ball late when you have a lead. But when you start out the game running as much as they're doing and not having success, 3.7 yards per carry, it's very difficult to get your pass game cranked up and going. And yeah, this last game was a loss, but look ahead to what might happen in the playoffs. You need to get this pass game going. Let's compare some year-over-year stats from week 12 onward because the Packers got going last year in week 12 onward. They started rolling. They were passing the ball last year on 59% of their dropbacks in the first half of games last season on early downs. This year, it's only 46% from week 12 onward. They were leaning we're talking about, okay, this year their 40% early down run rate in the first half is dead last in the NFL. They were 47% in quarters 1 to 3. That's 31st in the NFL. Last year, they were at 58%, which is basically NFL average. They were balanced last year. This year, they're almost just running the ball way too much. Jordan Love from week 12 onwards last year, look at the groove that they had Jordan Love playing with last year down the stretch by being a little bit more pass heavy and leaning into the pass and getting your quarterback that confidence. Let me compare these numbers side by side, okay? Last year, he was number 1 in the entire NFL in EPA per attempt at plus 0.34. This year, he's at plus 0.14, from plus 0.34 down to plus 0.14. Last year, he was number 1 in success rate at 52%. This year, it's down to 47%, which is 12th. Last year, his completion rate was 74%. That was third best in the NFL. This year, it's 65%, which is 18th. We're talking about an average quarterback in completion rate. Last year, he was third best. His first down rate, how many passes are first downs? Last year, he was at 40%. That was number one in the NFL. This year, 31%, which is number 22 in the NFL. Percentage of passes that gain percentage of passes that gain 10 plus yards. We're not talking about a high threshold, just 10 plus yards. Percentage of passes that produce those gains. Last year, 32%, which was seventh best in the NFL. This year, 27%, which is 25th in the NFL. And if you look around the league and the landscape here, I don't know if you can see this, but like this is your week 12 onward pass rate on early downs in the first half. All these teams that are like currently forecast to be in the playoffs, the Green Bay Packers are way more run heavy than any of them. Even more run heavy than the Philadelphia Eagles, who have Saquon Barkley, who have Jalen Hurts, who Jalen Hurts missed some time, and they do not really want to throw the ball a ton. That's not what Philly's been doing this year. It's just crazy to me that the Packers are even more run heavy than that team when they have Jordan Love, and we saw what Jordan Love was doing last year when he was a year younger. You know, if it's a quarterback like an Aaron Rodgers, let's pretend, where he's already been in the league for a long time, and now you have a different running back, and you lose some wide receivers, and your quarterback's arm is not quite where it once was, and so you lean a little bit more into the run game, I can understand that. But to go from where they had Jordan Love at last year during that stretch run in the postseason, and to pivot to the most run-heavy team in the NFL just because you got Josh Jacobs in the door, and now this passing attack is completely not clicking, is crazy to me. So I'm really interested to see the Packers, how they perform in the playoffs. You know, they need to try to win this game in order to have some better seeding, but it may, from a timing perspective, the game is at the same time as the Commanders game. So if the Commanders win that game, then the Green Bay Packers are going to be in that 7th seed in the NFC. And that means they're going to be going up against the Philadelphia Eagles in that first round matchup. So we're going to have the two most run-heavy teams in the NFC would be going head-to-head. But one of them has the explosiveness and the upside of what Saquon Barkley is bringing, which is 2,000 yards rushing. The other one has Josh Jacobs, who, like I just read off, is 4.1, 2.3 yards per carry, 3.7, 3.6, 4.1 in 6 of his last 7 games. Not anywhere near as productive. So why are you running him as much as as the Eagles are running? Why are you running him even more than what they're running Saquon Barkley? I don't understand that one. All right, let's hit a couple other quick topics here. All right, we've got Dominic in the comments. I want to pull up a couple of these because you guys have some interesting points here. Again, I'm not on my right screen, but I do want to make sure I get to some of your comments related to this last subject. Dominic mentioned they lean so hard on Jacobs, they cause Love to regress and fail to become a quarterback who could single-handedly win them games. Completely agree, Dominic. That's exactly what I'm kind of referring to here. On board 100% there. Exile, if you want to run midfield, call pass on 2nd and short, then run 2 more times on 3rd and 4th. It's really baffling. Also adds, Warren hit the nail on the head here, having Love bail out on 3rd and longs and claw back from double-digit deficits when he's cold is largely ineffective. Completely agree with your comments as usual, Exile. And Jason comments, Packers need to pass to set up the run, not the other way around, which is what they've been doing. I'm glad you guys are seeing it the same way I'm seeing it, because I just don't understand it. I do not understand. If you look at this year as a vacuum, then maybe this is just like, okay, this is just what this team is. But if you compare it, when you start to peel back to last year down the stretch, that's when it just makes no sense at all. To see what this team was doing last year at this time in the season with Jordan Love to this year makes no sense at all. All right. I want to talk about Bucky Watch. For those of you guys that have been on board with us for the whole season, you know we've got this 26-1 future on Bucky Irving of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to lead all rookies in rushing. I teased this on our show before Christmas about what we're going to be looking forward to here the rest of the season. And I don't know if you can hear the dog in the background or not, but this was a dog. This 26-1 future. Bucky Irving right now has 1,033 rushing yards. Jaden Daniels is number 2 at 169 behind him. 169 rushing yards behind Bucky. And then you got Tyrone Tracy, who's the next closest running back, is 253 yards behind Bucky Irving. And Tampa Bay obviously needs to win this last game. They're massive favorites. Don't expect Bucky to play the full game, but there's really very little likelihood that either of these guys are catching Bucky Irving, thanks to Bucky having another ridiculous game last week in week 17. So right now, what we've got, in my opinion, is we've got the staff. They've lined the lockers with the plastic to keep the champagne from getting into the lockers. We've got the champagne has been rolled into the locker room on ice. We've got the cameramen. You know, it's late fourth quarter. The camera crew, when a play is not happening, they're switching over and they're showing the iced down champagne in the locker room. It's being set out there on the tables for easy access. The foil wrappers are being peeled off of there so the guys can get ready to pop the corks. They've got the guys, Will in the black, chest off to the side of the field dressed in all black with their white gloves, and they're lifting out the trophy and they're setting it on top of the stand there to be ready to present to the winners of the Bucky Irving 26-1 most rushing yards by a rookie in the NFL. Hopefully we get there. We'll celebrate. If you guys did not get that bet in, why don't we pull up the rest of the futures that we've got from a team perspective? All right, we've got we'll get to the player futures momentarily, but hopefully you guys will be on board with us next year, because if you're on board with us this year, this is how the futures are looking. I just want to update this because we talked a little bit about it on last week's show. On Monday, we pay close attention to futures at this time of year. Look at that last one. That one came to life. I did not mark that one as a loss entering last week, but it looked like it was probably going to lose because the Giants should have lost their last 2 games. And lo and behold, the Giants pull off the upset of the Colts. And now we've got life for the Patriots to be the worst team in the NFL. We unfortunately did not get the Seahawks to make the playoffs, so that one moved to a loser. Mark that one there. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Raheem Morris did us no favors. That one's looking like it's going to be a loser. Could have stayed a winner if the Atlanta Falcons beat the Washington Commanders, if Raheem Morris used the time clock a little bit better. But, I mean, it's going to be a great year from the team futures. Let's look at the player futures right now. And here's where we stand with the player futures. Now, it's going to be really fascinating. The 2 that we are watching the most here is I graded the Dalton Kincaid as a loss. He's got no shot to get this number. Drake May. I want to say Drake May is like 125 yards short of this number, something like that. If they sit Drake May, we are going to win this bet of his passing yards under 2,400. If they play Drake May the full game, then we're probably going to lose this bet. So that game is going to be very fascinating. It's going to come down to just what Mayo decides to do with the quarterback there. DeAndre Swift is another one. He's been sitting on 5 rushing touchdowns for several weeks now. He has not gotten that 6th yet. So he's got one last game, and we're hoping that he doesn't get that 6th. If he does not score a rushing touchdown, then that will be a winner for us. And this is an opportunity where you could go and hedge if you want. This was a 3/4 of a unit prop here. So for all of you guys out there, if you want to do this, which I've not even thought enough about it. I don't know if the touchdown props are out yet. What are we, Tuesday right now? Probably not. You could always then go and bet DeAndre Swift, to score a touchdown. Now, it has to be a rushing touchdown, but you could bet that as a hedge and lock in some sort of profit if you bet his under 5.5 rushing touchdowns. Anthony Richardson, I think he needs 2 touchdowns. I don't think he's going to get that. I don't even know if he's going to play in this game. Him getting hurt really limited our ability to win this bet, which was always the risk of Anthony Richardson. Is why this number was as low as it was in the first place due to his injury history. So this is probably going to be a loss. Jaylen Warren also got hurt earlier this season. I think he needs like 110 yards rushing to get this in his last game against the Cincinnati Bengals. The Steelers are playing to win this game. But this was a situation where had Najee Harris gotten hurt and not Jaylen Warren, he clears this easily, this 615. Had neither guy got hurt, Jaylen Warren probably still clears this. But because Jaylen got hurt and Najee did not this season, it's looking like this one's probably going to lose. And then there's the Bucky Irving. So this is where we stand with the player futures, and we're looking, this is going to be profitable as well. So we will have, our futures package is always fun. I put in a ton of work in the off season working on futures as I'm writing the book, which is right over here, as you can see. 2024 football preview book. This takes months of my Rich's, Ray Summerlin's, Ryan McCrystal's, Joe Gibbs, our ref analyst, Tucker, who does some of our roster analysis. Of course, Ryan McCrystal comes in here, does the rookie draft class. We had some betting analysis from a couple of our interns. There's a lot of people that have been contributing to this book. And unfortunately, it's still me who's doing the full out layout and assembly and everything. I'm the one who writes all 32 team chapter narratives. I'm the one who updates all the data on all the pages in here. So I have my hands involved in this a ton, but the staff is magical with the things that they contribute in the various different sections as well. And this bad boy is what leads to the futures. So you put in the work, you plant the seed, you tend to the soil, you fertilize the plant, you water the plant, you watch it grow. You get those futures after working this hard as we do to write this book. You got good thought processes, you got good futures. And so that has absolutely paid off for us this year. So the book will be available this summer. So as we're winding the season down, just a reminder, that book, we'll sell it next year once again before the season starts, like May, June timeframe, we start selling it. The futures are available. If there's things that you liked about this show, you're just finding out because of the YouTube algorithm or what have you, you haven't been familiar with what we've been doing over at Sharp Football Analysis, we've been doing this for years. We've been having success for years. From a futures perspective, everybody loves the book. The season, you can hear the results. And at any rate, I think that's going to do it for the show here. Everybody's got their activities. We're at about 90 minutes, just a little bit under because we started a couple minutes late. But keep in mind, go to sharp.football if you want to get the rest of the week for $1. Now, there probably won't be as many NFL spread total picks, probably not as many props either, but you're still going to get the bowl games. You're still going to get what we do deliver from a props perspective. Again, we were off a 3-0 night last night, but just from a volume perspective with a lot of questions, we're not going to risk too much of the bankroll that we've built up on the season on week 18. But what we are going to be doing is I've already begun handicapping the matchups that we're likely to see in the wild card round. We are going to be attacking the wild card round games pretty early this year. So we're going to have some of that on Sunday night, Monday, Tuesday of next week. So by the time we come on the show next Tuesday, we're already going to have several bets, in my opinion, live for the wild card round of games. And so if you have not bought a postseason package yet, you could do that. Use the coupon code SHOW250 and get $250 off the postseason package. Do so. That sale is going to end tomorrow night. This sale where you could get everything for $1 for just through Sunday. That sale is going to end tomorrow night as well. So all the sales are ending tomorrow night, January 1st at midnight. So not when the ball drops, but the very next night, 24 hours after that, all these sales are going to end. So get involved now if you're interested. With that said, tons of college football games coming up. Hopefully we've gotten you pretty prepared for the college football playoff games. Really looking forward to watching those. Week 18, let's see what these matchups end up bringing us for the first round of the playoffs in the wild card round. Cannot wait. We will be back here on Friday, noon Eastern, for a live show. Myself, I don't know if we're going to have Ryan. I don't know yet about the college stuff because there are not going to be very many college games left at that point. So we may save Ryan, but we're definitely going to have Pam in here. We're definitely going to have Joe Gibbs in here analyzing the referees for the last week of the NFL season. Hope you guys have a very, very happy New Year. Enjoy yourselves this evening. Be safe. I want to see you guys watching the show on Friday. But best of luck to you in the new year. Happy New Year, and we'll see you on Friday.
Right